How y'all doing? For this review, I'm going to cover a comic book from France, bande dessinee as it's called. And if you're interested in a fantasy, particularly one that involves fairies and steampunk, I got the book for you. And it is Wika, written by Thomas Day and illustrated by Oliver Ledroit. And what you see here is basically what you're going to get through the whole comic here. And before I go into that, here I made a little synopsis of the story here, and showing you some of the art.
The story takes place in the fairy world called Pan. A prophecy foretold that Prince Oberon would meet his end by the daughter of his sister Titania. Prince Oberon launches an attack against Castle Grimm to kill Duke Grimm, his wife Titania, and his niece Wika. Just before his victory, Titania gives Wika to one of her most trusted servants, Haggis, to protect her from Oberon. Upon the escape, Haggis trims Wika's wings and anoints her with a healing ink that gives her tattoos that constantly change based on how she feels. She is later given to a couple living in a cottage in the country. Years later, Wika grows up and moves to the city of Avalon. She meets up with a young man named Bran. Together they struggle to survive and build up a home together on the docks. Meanwhile, her presence becomes known to those who tried to kill her long ago in attempts to finish the task. Defeating those that attacked them, Wika and Bran run away from the city only to be chased by two of Oberon's wolf children. Bran dies fending them off, leaving Wika alone in the world. When all hope for Wika seems lost, she is rescued by the three black fairies who lead the resistance against Oberon and his conquest across Pan. They tell Wika who her parents were and why Oberon is trying to kill her. They gift her with new wings and train her natural magical abilities. Now they must raise the other nations and join forces to face the armies of Oberon.
So, that's the basis of the story. Nothing, groundbreaking and all that. We've heard this story before, but this is a very nice presented story. And the artwork, as you can see, is pretty much what you see throughout the entire thing. This is one of those cases where what you see on the cover is pretty much what you see throughout the entire book, and Ledroit does not waste any space. There's hardly any. There's a few pages where you see the typical comic borders, but oftentimes it is packed edge to edge with his art. There's even a few fold outs here, because this is one of those you take your time to see the level of detail he has on this. Now, about the story, if there's a critique I have about this, the first half of the story has a nice pace about it, but once Wika is trained and starts waging her war against her uncle, it feels more sped up getting to the end. This could have used one or two more volumes to match the pacing of the first half, and would have been a much more complete story. However, based on the level of detail in the art alone, that probably would have taken a lot longer, and I probably would have been making a video at this time. And not to mention, with him finishing this work, he could continue on with many of us are already familiar with him, and another piece of work, Volume 12 of Requiem Vampire Knight. Check that one out. And again, much more mature content than this one, fair warning. But I was aware of that through the Heavy Metal magazines, when they brought those out back in the early 2000s. A friend of mine collected those, and I read several of them. But they also made regular tomes of these, so I don't know if they're currently out. They're probably expensive when you do. You definitely get them in digital format, and you can see and read them online. So, Requiem Vampire Knight is just kind of that's the gothic heavy metal version of where this one is steampunk and fairies. Requiem Vampire Knight is involving the stories of an afterlife where the truly evil come down there, and depending on the type of evil person they are, they could be vampires, werewolves, ghouls, mummies, what have you. So that's another, that's something to look into, but we're on Wika here. So this is a great example of what you expect in bande dessinees. If you're like me, and you have probably looked on shelves of American comics produced by the big two and a few of the smaller ones, you can see at times often a pretty decent cover, but when you look at it, the artwork is subpar at best or low quality at worst. And a lot of it has to do with choosing artists that's influenced by each other and are also on deadlines. Not so with bande dessinees. Bande dessinees are they take their time writing it and drawing it, and it could be months to years before another volume comes out. Going back to Requiem Vampire Knight, that came out in the early 2000s, and hopefully with him finishing this, he's probably working on number 12, I think, out of 13. It's 2024. Whew. Takes a while, and you can find several comics like that. So, and here's the thing, you know, for those of you who don't know much about bande dessinees, European comics in general, we probably are more familiar than you think. The thing is, you know, I'm mentioning Heavy Metal magazine. That started off as Metal Hollande, which is a French magazine that shows off many of the European comics at the time. National Lampoon came by the magazine, before there was a series of bad movies in today's age. They came into Europe, tried to see if they could do a European National Lampoon there, but then they noticed Metal Hollande. Then they decided to bring that stateside as Heavy Metal, and giving translations to many of the comics there. So that's how a lot of us may have known about it, even though they never really stressed the fact that this is European. You know, Mobius, Corbin, Droulet, and several others. You know, they showed not only high quality stories and art, they also showed maturity level. And the thing is, I noticed that most European comics don't have much in the way of superheroes outside of England. No, they cover science fiction, fantasies, dramas, historical dramas and things like that. They cover all grounds on that. So if you're looking for something outside of superhero comics, check into bande dessinees. You can find a great selection of things like that. So, almost digressing here, but I think the point is that when these stories came to America from the 70s on up, they did not distinguish them as bande dessinees. They were just comics. Good comics, mature comics, yes, but not European comics. Unlike, say, manga, which has a particular style of art, how they are presented in the formats and the size and the books and all that compared to American comics. So you go into any store right here, you have your regular comic books and you have your manga separated. And unfortunately, European comics is integrated into United States comics with hardly any distinction unless you were paying attention. So look into that. Look into European comics. They're the best-selling Western comics around. As Razorfist says, United States is not the best-selling Western comics. It's in France, and with good reason. And this is a good example of what to look forward to. And there's another comic book I'd like to express in a future time that's also good quality artwork and also a good story. But if you like fairies and steampunk and a nice complete story that is a feast for the eyes, check out Wika. You won't be disappointed. Thank you all for watching. You have a nice day.